BeastNet is brought to you by James Safety Services in partnership with OCR Buddy and OCR Strong. Here we discuss all things OCR and fitness related. Welcome to BeastNet.
This is Mike with BeastNet, and I've got Megan with me again today, and we're going to talk about the stuff that we didn't get to talk about last time. So
yeah, this is working. We just kind of mesh and flow, and next thing you know, we're running over on time, and apparently we're previewing episodes before we even know that they're in the works.
Yeah, it works. So we've talked about nutrition quite a bit the last couple episodes. So we wanted to kind of go more into mental this time, didn't we? Wasn't that what we kind of left off on, was that the mental side of this? And that is something that is always fascinated me. But the more I've gotten into working out and exercise and putting in my, my goals, the mental means so much more now to me than it ever did.
Yeah, it's honestly the biggest part of any kind of performance. And I'll say, leaving off after the last episode, like I was sitting there and I'm like, oh, wow, I probably came off like a horrible person. Like people probably hate me because I'm like, oh, well, I don't want to train you. And like, if you're just doing this because, you want something to do, like you're not for me. And that's completely not the case. But as somebody who is so passionate in, sports performance and obstacle course racing, obviously, and just health and fitness in general, I want everybody to love what they're doing and to like really be passionate about the training and the performance that they're putting in, whether it's on the course or wherever else. Like I had mentioned last time, if you've got a body, you're an athlete. You don't necessarily have to be going out onto the race course every week, every month, whatever else. If, you just have to make it through your day, you want to do it to the best of your ability. So you should be training specifically for performance of whatever it is that you are going to be doing.
Oh yeah, no, I agree. And that was one thing. I didn't take it that way. The way I took it more of, you're very passionate about what you do.
Mm-hmm.
And when you start working with someone, you go very deep into how to help that person. And if they don't have a clear avenue on where they're going, or they're really not interested, it's really a waste of both of your times.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, obviously I've done the whole right workouts for Spartan for so long. I've helped out as moderator for Spartan. I answer all the questions on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, whatever else. And I get a lot of people that are just looking for the shortcuts. It's, okay, what's the plan to tackle this specific obstacle? Or, how am I going to do this? Or I just want to get through this one race. And it's taking a lot of reframing of my clients to get them to realize that we're not just looking to beat the monkey bars or to beat the twister or to beat Gibbons. I want to give you all of the tools. So no matter what you're going to be facing, you already know how to beat them, even if it's your first time. I used the analogy with a client yesterday, and I said, I'm not going to continue to teach you how to add 2 + 2 and say, well, you're going to only have to add 2 + 2 on the test. If I actually teach you how to add whatever or multiply or teach anything, I want you to be able to put it together on the fly. I want you to be able to problem solve out on the course. So when you get up to an obstacle, it's, oh, well, I've never seen this before, but you already have the answers because you've trained the biomechanics for it. And too many people, when they come into obstacle course racing, think, I need a game plan for each specific obstacle. And I just want to know how to beat this obstacle. Oh, I've beaten the monkey bars going straight across. Now, how am I supposed to beat the monkey bars when they're staggered? Or now, how am I supposed to beat twister? Well, all of it's the same. If you have the mindset and the problem solving for it, you're going to beat it every single time. And I think not a lot of people realize that that's a huge part of thinking, I am an athlete, I am training specifically for performance. You're really just developing plans in your head, and then you're showing up and you have the tools that you need regardless.
Yeah, and that's so true. I mean, it's the basics. If you can get the basics down, you can do a lot. I mean, I was really surprised. Like when I went to go do the ultra in Dallas last year, I hadn't been training for, Spartan. I was training for
Mm-hmm.
triathlon. So I was completely training differently, but I was surprised at how much of that triathlon training helped me in the Spartan.
Yeah.
Because all of a sudden I had built up muscles I hadn't been working on before. My chest and my arms were bigger from the swimming and everything else. And my legs, different muscles in my legs were suddenly there that weren't there before because of all the bike riding. So I mean, it's not always just training, like you said, for specific obstacles. If you train the base and get your basics down, you can figure out most of them and you'll have the body type. Because if you really get into this, you start jumping around from different Spartan, or there's Survivor, there's, over there on the East Coast, you have a whole bunch more that we don't, but Epic Series, Bone Frog, I mean, all these other ones, I mean, there's one that I was just talking to a couple and that has a place in New Hampshire.
Yeah. Dirty.
Yeah, dirty. We'll talk to them. That sounds amazing. And I so want to go out there and do it. But they keep adding new stuff and there's new stuff. So every time you go, there might be something different. And if you've just trained to do the monkey bars, you haven't worked the muscles that you're going to need to do, something else. And that's kind of why you have to, with someone like you who's done multiple, has an idea. And it's like, let me help you build the basics.
Right. Exactly. And that's why something like OCRWC is so big in, the international side. Mm-hmm. There are so many people that, over here, maybe they'll dabble because it's local. But I mean, if you go over to Europe or whatever else, like OCRWC is the big race and you're getting totally different obstacles for, everything. I do a lot of Instagram work for just various things, and I've been looking into a lot more of the international races. Mm-hmm. And I was watching videos from the Spanish OCR scene, and there was a race a couple weeks ago where they had like a salmon ladder, and then once they got to the top, they transitioned over to a declining monkey bar, and then their final rig was like laches to a Kraken like Race Ready Obstacle has, where it's like the nunchucks twister to like the helicopter from Bone Frog. And I'm like, I want everything about that. Yeah. And, you look at the gyms over there in Spain and they're not going just through typical monkey bars. They're training absolutely everything. They're learning the different grips, but like they're strength training as well. And they're training to adapt to whatever is thrown at them. I mean, if Race Ready Obstacle brings out Kraken for OCRWC, all of us here in the States would be like, what is this? There's no way we can do this. But yet in Spain, they're doing it every single weekend. And it's just so amazing to see. And it all comes with the mentality behind training. It's not, okay, well, I know I'm about to see this. It's, well, I don't know what I'm going to see. So let me just go through every single technique that I might need. I'm going to strengthen all of the muscles that I might need. And it's not always just, okay, I'm going to, continue to hammer home my biceps because I really like my lock-offs. It's no, I want to transition between a bicep hold and a swinging and a whatever else, and just finding the best exercises possible to hit every muscle group you need for each technique you'd ever need. And that is the premise behind all of my training. It's specifically for biomechanics for technique as opposed to just hammering obstacles or whatever else.
Yeah. And that's one of the things that, I wanted to see. Because I mean, I've seen like the OCR, world championships, and it seems like they take random obstacles from everybody.
Yeah.
So it's like, you never know what you're going to hit. I mean, that's one of the things, like whenever I do a race, I'm one of those ones, I don't want to see the map. I don't care what the map says, because I want to make sure I'm ready for whatever's on there.
Right.
And I've done a couple races, a couple local ones where they throw in some random thing that I never would have thought of. And I'm like, oh, how am I going to do this? But you figure it out, you look at it and it's like, okay, this is similar to this. It's going to use these muscles. Let's go ahead and do it. but you got to be ready for whatever. And I mean, I think that's one of the biggest problems. It's like one of the, a lot of OCRs, and we hear it a lot, is get out of your comfort zone.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of people, like you said, is if we took them and gave them the obstacles that we have that they have over in Europe, that's definitely out of our comfort zone. And most of us have gotten so used to the races we do. That is our comfort zone.
100%. And it's crazy to talk about this because, we just heard that Fit Challenge is no longer gonna be continuing on. And we're seeing local race brands left and right. Their numbers are dropping and they're not sure how much longer they're going to be able to be around. They're the brands that are putting together all of these innovative obstacles. They're the ones bringing their obstacles to OCRWC. I mean, I remember talking to somebody in a Spartan group a couple weeks ago, and we were all having the conversation after, Ryan Atkins came out and said, that San Luis Obispo was more of a cross country match than anything else. And, there's no difficulty in Spartan. And then somebody in a Spartan group was like, yeah, he's right. Like Spartan, it gets stale, but then you have something like Savage and they're making you Lachey and there's no chance that I'd ever be able to Lachey. And it's like, well, you're not training to. I mean, I am now training like once or twice a week out at a ninja gym in Massachusetts. And in no way is it set up for any obstacle course racing. It doesn't have walls. It doesn't have a straight monkey bar. It's literally all random things that you can Lachey on. And I posted a video on Instagram. Actually, I posted it on 2 different profiles because the first time I was like, here's me not even comfortable jumping off a trampoline, and then somehow I managed to catch the handles and attempt to Lachey, and I miss it. And then like the second try I went through and I managed to do it. And I was like, if you watch the video, you can see where I kind of freeze up right before I jump for my second attempt. And like halfway through is like, wait, why are you tensing up? No, you're bailing right now. You know exactly what you're going to do. All you have to do is swing from your hips. And when you hit that sweet spot, you go for it. You bring your arms in front of you and you can hear me scream yes as soon as I catch it. And it's like, I have never Lacheyed to handles before. That was only my 3rd time ever in history attempting a Lachey. And I got it, no problem. And it's all just because I had trained the technique. And then when I was going to do it, I didn't have the confidence. I was psyching myself out. And I said, no, if you don't have the confidence for this, you're never going to get it.
No.
And it's all part of that mental side of everything. I mean,
it is.
So many people would be able to pass obstacles first, second, third attempt if they just had the confidence to do it.
And I agree. It's one of the things that I'll be honest. It's why for a long time, I've thought that obstacle completion is my favorite thing, because my biggest problem on a lot of these races where there's no obstacle completion is give me that second chance.
Yeah.
That first chance was my first time seeing this. And I really I want a second chance because I know I can do it because I know what I did wrong now. But I don't get that. And that's, and I may not see that again for a while, and there's some obstacles that I've seen once that never came back, that if I wish I would have had that second chance at it, and that's one of those things. I like that because how else do you learn? But to keep trying it over and over again. And I would much rather have like, make me finish this obstacle.
Right.
Then, hey, you had your one shot, and that's why I've always loved the idea of, obstacle completion.
Yeah. And the whole tap and go do burpees, it's just giving us excuses not to gain confidence. If you don't ever attempt, how are you supposed to do it? One of my clients, he tore his bicep like years ago, and he was big time into obstacle course racing right before it happened. And then he had other health issues and had to go through some stuff, and said, I'm going to get my shoulder, my bicep, I'm going to get that fixed when everything else is taken care of. And then years later, he goes in and sees his doctor And his doctor's like, well, it looks like it's as healed as can be. Like there's nothing more we can do with it. You're strengthening it. He started with, Megan, I'm never going to be able to hang again. I'm never going to be able to do pull-ups. And I like kind of sort of eased him into it. It's like, well, let's try, just start on a Smith rack where we, set it at a height and then have you drop down. You're going to be up on your toes in a hanging position and try to hold as much weight in your arms versus your legs. And he's like, oh, that's easy. And then I gave him a band and I said, okay, now we're going to step off the box into the band in a hang. See how you do with that. He's like, oh, that's easy. I'm like, okay. I'm like, I'm not going to pressure you. If you don't feel comfortable with this, just say no. But these are looking really good. You're not guarding at all. Would you like to try a pull-up? And he did a pull-up. And then he was like, I don't need this band. And he was doing body weight pull-ups. And still, I mean, he's running Boulder Dash on Sunday for his first race back in a while. And he's like, I'm not going to do any hanging obstacles. I'm like, okay, that's fine. So the gym we're at now has one of the rigs where it has like the 4 bars that kind of go up in a stepping fashion, but it's not actually attached to anything. I'm like, okay, we've been using it for like jumping pull-ups to get him familiarized with, climbing a wall. Like we went through rope climbs, all this other stuff. He's like, okay, I feel really good about this. I'm like, well, let's try this. I want you to hang on the bottom handle and I want to see if you can go from 1 bar up the ladder a little bit to the next one. And he pulled and he felt comfortable enough to transition to the next one. And I'm like, there you go. In 2 days time, he went from going from one to the next all the way to the top, back down and working his way back up. And I'm like, this is going to be the basics you need if you ever wanted to try hanging obstacles again. I'm not going to pressure you. No. You're coming back from shoulder injuries. Do what you can. If you feel like you want to burpee out, or if you need to do some kind of penalty at, a Boulder Dash or wherever else that doesn't have penalties, like do what you feel like you need to do in its place. But your strength is there. We can keep working on any techniques you'd like, but with the training that he's been getting for these years, he is strong enough now to go back out there and do something he never thought he'd be able to do again. And his confidence is there, partially because I said, no pressure. If you want to try it, you can. If you don't, you don't have to. But your strength is there. Your technique is there. I'll talk you through it every step of the way. And he wants to keep trying. Mm-hmm. And the more he keeps trying, the more confident he gets in himself.
Yeah. And it's all the mental. It's like one of the things a lot of the listeners know. I basically broke all 5 metatarsals in my left foot 6 years ago, straight across the top.
Yep.
Just smashed him. And I was told by a doctor, they're like, you'll never push off that foot again, ever. I'm like, okay. Yeah. So I spent like 4 years believing him. I'll never push off with that foot again. I'll never push off with that foot again. And then finally I'm like, well, I need to lose weight because I was up to like almost 300 pounds. And I'm like, I need to do something. So I started walking and then I started jogging. And then every once in a while I get a pain through that foot, but then I would have movement back. And I'm like, well, that's weird. Talk to my doctor, like scar tissue, the scar tissue is breaking up. And my doctor's like, I don't know why that doctor told you that, but if you go, you can run again. You're going to have to get past the scar tissue. I'm like, okay. So I pushed. And yeah, I did a marathon last year in 4 hours and 39 minutes.
Amazing job.
And it's one of those like, oh, okay. Because a doctor told me I would never push off that foot again. I'm like, okay, I can never run again. I'm done.
Right.
But then it was like, I needed something. I needed the cardio. And mentally I had to change that thought process and say, okay, doc, you're wrong. I'm going to do it anyway.
Right. I have a client right now who he came to me. I mean, he had found me through like the YouTube stuff.
Yeah.
And, he'd watch some videos and be like, I love this. He talked to me at Indian Mud Run. He'd reach out to me a little bit more. He had a trainer that he was working specifically for, quote unquote, grip strength. And then he had previously torn his ACL. And he decided he wasn't going to get his ACL repaired. It was the second time he tore it. He's like, I'm in my 40s. I'm not going to go through that all again. So then like he had kind of talked to a physical therapist. He was working with a separate running coach. Like I had explained to him after numerous talks, like too many cooks in the kitchen. You have somebody for every single area, but there's nobody connecting the dots. And it took a while for him to kind of build up the trust to say, okay, well, maybe I don't need to see the physical therapist because the physical therapist is only helping me rehab the knee. When in all reality, if you have any kind of injury, we know that it's the joints above and below that cause the dysfunction. So instead of thinking, let's just get the knee stronger, let's fix the entire kinetic chain. So let's put this into more performance training and give you, the performance side of knee rehab, not just the activities of daily living rehab that physical therapists tend to go to. Again, there's always great physical therapists, especially sports medicine. If you're ever injured and you're looking to come back to sport and performance, seek out a sports medicine physical therapist instead of just your typical physical therapist, because they will help bridge that gap a little bit more. But then from there, I was like, okay, your running coach is kind of giving you general training. So along with the rehab we're doing, let's throw in a little bit of running. And then I was like, okay, you're really working your grip, but how much of your back are you hitting? You might be getting your lats, but are you getting your traps and, everything else? And he was like, no. And then he found himself with other injuries popping up. And I'm like, listen, we need this. And then finally he came and was like, I'm going to trust you. Let's do it all. And now not only has he kept his band for the first time in any obstacle course race, which was his first big goal of the season. He kept it at like Native X and at Savage, just in Florida. He's also running faster and he's running more confident. And the biggest thing we've been working on is his need to overthink everything. So like he had texted me yesterday and was like, I need to work the gibbons. I'm so nervous about gibbons. I'm like, you don't need to work gibbons. Like we're working your swing. We are teaching you how to swing. If we can maintain a consistent swing, you're going to get gibbons every single time. You don't have to worry about hitting just gibbons or whatever else. And majority of the training that I'm doing with him at this point is educating him on exactly what we're working on and building that confidence. It's mental reshaping more than any kind of physical anything.
And that is the hardest part, is the mental. I mean, that was the hardest part with me when I first started losing the weight. Because like I said, I was 295 pounds. I dislocated my shoulder 4 times on the last Spartan race before I lost weight. So because, well, I'm stupid and I just put it back into place and kept going, but just pop it back.
I don't recommend that.
No, I don't. Yeah, I don't either. My racing partner, the second time I did it, she's like, you're popping your shoulder back into place, aren't you? I'm like, yeah, shut up. Let's just go. But I mean, I'd gotten so big that my shoulder couldn't hold my weight, on the hanging obstacles, because I have shoulder issues anyway. But and that was the hardest part, is once I even started losing the weight, I still had that fear of, are my shoulders strong enough now to hold weight? Have I worked my shoulders enough and lost the weight that I can do it? And now I think honestly, my shoulders are strong enough. They probably could hold me even at the 295, but I don't want to get back there. But it's one of those, it was that whole mental thing of, and I think a lot of people don't think about this too, when you've been that big, and it sounds bad to say this, but that's what I still see in the mirror. When I look in the mirror, like when I lost all the weight, I got down to 180 pounds, which at that point was even like, I'm like, okay, yeah, my boss is like, are you sick? I'm like, no, leave me alone. But, and then I still didn't believe it. So I like looked at pictures from when I started to where I was at, and I'm like, oh, damn, and finally saw it. But it was one of those things mentally, it was so hard to get past that, where I was to where I am, and when I did my first race competitively, I just went out there and did it. And I was so amazed by how much faster I was, how much I could do obstacles. I missed 2 obstacles on my first, one. And it was I tore the calluses on my hand doing the rig. And then I rushed and I missed the spear for like the first time in 5 years.
Oh, wow.
I just wasn't paying it. I was in a rush. I'm like, I've done so good. And I've only missed one. And then of course I missed the one that I always get. But it's that whole mental thing of, I kept telling myself, and the only reason I missed the rig too was because I've told myself I've never been able to get it. And I still haven't. And that's all mental. And I know it is. I know I've just got to get out of my head and remember that I'm not 295 pounds. I can hold my weight and I can swing across that and do it, And I was so mad because that race, I was the closest I've ever been. I was like 2 rings away. And when I grabbed all this, I'd already tore my hand a little bit.
Yeah.
So all of the like scab just like tore off and I peeled my hand basically and dropped. And I'm like, ugh. And even when I was doing the burpees, the guy's like, you realize you're bleeding. And I'm like, yeah, I'll figure that out when I get to the end. It's just right over there.
Yep.
It was the mental side. Like you said, it is so mental. I mean, even now I get friends all the time because I'm on a run streak of 600 and something days where I ran at least a mile a day. And actually this year I ran at least a 5K since January 1st every day. And everyone's like, how do you? And I'm like, honestly, at this point, it's not willpower anymore. It's stubbornness because I don't want to let the streak.
Right.
It's the mental side of it. Everyone's like, how do you have that much willpower? And how do you have that much mental strength? I'm like, this point, it's just stubborn. I don't want to let the streak die. If it wasn't for the fact that the streak had been going for so long, I'd probably just be like, I'm taking a day off.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I get that completely. I'm one of those people, like, I'll do like, one time I did like the posting like 100 days happy on Instagram and I got to day 100 and I didn't post. Like Sheldon from Big Bang Theory would absolutely hate me. But yeah, no. It's crazy. So one of the biggest things when I'm talking to clients and getting them ready for race day, like I love to preach to them, like have a race plan, like know what you're going to do. Like in something like an Indian mud run where you get, 5 fails to be able to podium. It's like, okay, if you get caught up at, and I say nuclear ninja rings, because that's the first one you're going to face, like how long are you going to hang out there before you say, hey, I have 4 more that I can fail without podiuming. I'm going to just take this loss and I'm going to get out on the course. Or, something like an OCRWC where it's one and done. Like, how long are you going to hang out there? Like, what are you going to try in terms of techniques? And something I'll actually tell my clients is, I know you don't like to look at a map. I'm somebody that I will look at a map more just so I can understand the layout of the obstacles. So I know, where I need to push a little bit more, or, if there is like a gauntlet of, grip intensive obstacles, what can I do where? And then when I get out onto race day, I'll get to the venue early. And if I can, I will sit down somewhere, behind the festival area, away enough from people. And I'll just meditate a little bit. I'll focus on my breathing. And then from there, I, do a mental check of, okay, how's my body feeling? Go through, how's my neck feeling? How are my shoulders? Am I feeling any stress, tightness? Kind of just breathe into those areas and see if I can release them mentally. And then I'll turn my thoughts to the race itself. And the first thing I do is just a dry run through of everything I can remember about the map. And, with how the weather is and everything else, like, what am I seeing myself doing out on course right now? If I get up to an obstacle, like if I get to Twister and it's like a little dewy in that morning and I see that I fall off, I visualize myself doing burpees, I keep going. But then I come back and I'm like, okay, what obstacles did I see myself failing in that first attempt? Why did I fail that? Okay. So if I find myself coming up to Twister and there is dew on the obstacle, what is the best technique for this? And, if I'm going backwards and I'm in a bicep lock off traveling backwards and I find myself falling out of the lock off, is it worth it to pull myself back up and continue on? Or when I get to the crossbar, do I switch to a lateral swing? Or, if I am swinging laterally and I switch to a lock off, do I turn myself forward to pull down the next handle, or do I stay swinging laterally so I don't have to worry about killing momentum and regaining? And I visualize the obstacle with multiple different techniques, whether I need to transition between them or not, just so I have that plan in my head of, okay, I'm not going to allow myself to just fail. I want to fight for this. And, regardless of if I fail it on race day or not, like, I go into it with confidence saying I have a plan regardless of what I am going to see for it. And it's the days that I didn't do that, or the days where I just really didn't feel confident, those are the days that I failed. I remember going out to Killington in 2019, and that day it was raining and it was cold. Everybody was miserable. That's when they put like the mile marker 14 going up the hill again, when they said it was 13.7 miles. And, it was terrible. I got to the multi-rig and it was raining. And the day before at the open house, I had gone through, and even though it was completely dry out, I said, I want to practice chicken winging across the multi-rig. I don't know if I'm going to be able to do it. I've never chicken winged across the bar before, but I want to know that I can do it if I need to. So I went and I practiced across it for a couple of steps. So then when I got out on race day, I chicken winged, I got to the bar, and it's funny. I call it like the military crawl, like arm over arm as you're like going across, because there's no actual way to like chicken wing that bar without kind of crawling across it. And then I got to the end of the bar and we got to the ropes, and I built up a little bit of swinging momentum on one rope, and I swing across, rang the bell, and the marshal that was there, it said, "You are only the 4th female today who has beaten the multi-rig." I'm like, amazing. Yeah. And I know that I only was able to do that because the day before I came in and I didn't even have to get across the entire bar. I just needed to figure out how to take a couple of crawling steps across it, and my confidence was there. I didn't even second guess it when I got to the multi-rig. It wasn't do I attempt to swing, or what can I do now? Nope. I just went and I chicken winged.
Yeah. And I mean, that's what's amazing. It's like I said, normally I don't look at it, but it's one of those things. When I was doing competitive, when I do the competitive race, I look a little closer, because it's like you said, you do want to look at, like, if I have 3 or 4 obstacles that are back to back, like upper body strength, how much do I want to conserve on that first one to make sure I can hit the other 2, you know, and that kind of thing. And, think about that. But, a lot of times for years, I just did the open heats constantly, because I was bigger. I knew I wasn't, there. And then now that I'm a little smaller and, I've been running every day and I've got a little bit more breath in me, I'll go for it. And I like going for the competitive, but at the same time, I still do like the open heat sometimes with my friends. But a lot of times what I'll do, if there's a group of friends, I'll go run the competitive and then come back and do the open with them.
Oh yeah.
I've done that a few times, but it's a whole different mentality too. Because that's one thing I've learned, is it is a different mentality when you do the competitive versus the open. Because, for me, I still want to complete every obstacle, but when I'm doing competitive, I want to do it faster. And I want to make sure I can do it efficiently, and get through it. And that's a completely different thing, and it's some of those things you have to be ready also for when there's something weird gets thrown in your way. Like I had in Hawaii, I was going across Twister, and it was two lengths. When I got to the cross beam, my leg on the other side was stuck and wouldn't spin. So I couldn't get it to move. I kept grabbing it, trying to pull it and get it to spin. It wouldn't spin. So I ended up having to actually go across the crossbeam to the next lane and then back down.
Oh my gosh.
So it was like one of those things that it was just like, and amazingly, I think, I can't remember. I think I dropped like I was like one hand away, but I finally slipped off. But I mean, it was just kind of one of those things like, well, what do I do now? And if you're not ready for that, something going wrong, you just kind of sit there, and most people would have probably just dropped, but I'm like, no, I'm halfway across this thing. Let's see if I can keep going. So I just went, across the crossbeam to the next lane.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's at the end of the day, literally obstacle course racing is all overcoming whatever is in your way and being able to problem solve. I remember going out to Tahoe and they had like monkey twister monkey or whatever else. And it was like 5 segments long, like horrendously long. And my plan going in was if I felt like I could not make it across the entire thing, I'm going to drop early and just get to the burpees because I'm not going to waste all of that energy. I mean,
Yeah.
We're all suffering from hypothermia. We're soaking wet and our hands are wet and frozen. And I got on, I tried to, swing across one. I'm like, you know what? It's not worth it right now.
Yeah.
Like I am going to be a lot warmer doing these burpees. And I mean, I'm probably going to have to do them anyway. So just save any kind of energy here, get right to it and just keep moving. And I was okay
Sometimes
with
you
that
got to.
because I had that plan already in my head and I came to terms with it well ahead of time.
Yeah.
And I know like for a lot of mandatory obstacle completion races, there are people that come in and they're like, I know I'm not going to keep my band. And it's like, in some sense, it's like, well, it's good for you for trying. But if you come in thinking I'm not going to keep it, then you're probably not going to keep it.
No.
You're going to give up on an obstacle a little too soon.
Yeah.
And that's where it's like, sometimes having that plan can help and sometimes it can hinder it. I want my athletes to always fight for every single obstacle they possibly can. I mean, if they drop and they need to burpee, unfortunately, you can't retry in Spartan. So I don't hold them, responsible if they have to go and do burpees. But if they're, running Savage or if they're running Indian Mud Run or whatever else, you say, okay, what happened? What techniques did you try? What did you learn from it? How did you know when it was time to move on?
Yeah.
Like everything can still be a learning opportunity, even if things don't go according to plan. But I want them to go into every single race and say, I want to beat this obstacle, this obstacle, this obstacle. These are my goals for this race. This is what I want to do.
Yeah. And you have to have different ideas on how to do it too. Because one thing I've ran into on some of the races is because I'm shorter and I have a smaller wingspan. I've had a couple times on some of the monkey bars and some of those type obstacles where I've had to jump.
Yeah.
Like I've had to swing myself out and I couldn't do the normal, just reach out and grab it. I had to literally let go and basically fly to the next one because I just didn't have the wingspan to reach. A lot of people, that was the hardest thing for me the first time it happened. All of a sudden I reached out and it was like, and I basically just fell off because I reached out and all of a sudden I just couldn't reach the next one. And I just kind of kept going and missed it. And then I learned, okay, I've got to look because sometimes it's a little far out and my wingspan doesn't work. So a lot of times on the beaters, I can't, most of the time I can't reach the beaters. I have to fly to the beaters.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And it's learning those obstacles. But I also like you said, it's kind of cool when you have obstacles that and you're like, okay, I figured out how to do this one. I know the technique, but it's so much fun too when all of a sudden you come up to it and you're like, what in the bloody hell is this? And how am I going to do it? Because I've never seen this before. But then you have that in your head, like I've never seen it, but it's similar to this one, kind of like this one. I know I've trained these muscles to be able to do it. And you give that thought of like, well, if I do this, this, and this, I think it's going to work. And you hope it does. And if it doesn't, hey, now you know enough something else to train for, and that's what I kind of like is the whole idea of, I do a lot of the, like I said, local ones where there's a lot of weird, I do one that's Rise Challenge. And I just talked to Tammy yesterday. I love Tammy, but I'm going to one of her, three of her races in May. And she has one of them, it's a ranch challenge. And one of them, you're bucking hay, you're throwing hay bales. Another one, you're climbing a whole entire hay stack that's 15 feet up in the air.
Wow.
All this stuff, you're lassoing, you're doing all these things that I've never done in a race before, but I've grew up on a farm and with friends with animals. So
yeah,
I've done it all before. My brother, I still buck hay with him all the time when he delivers hay. So it was just kind of like, oh, okay, I know some of the maneuvers to do this stuff, but it was something completely different. And that's what I'm starting to really love is going to these races where all of a sudden it's like, what is this? All of a sudden they had one of on hers where we had to take the ammo cans and lift them overhead. which
Yeah.
I've never had to do that in obstacle course race because there's never lifting overhead. It's all pulling down, hanging, stuff like that. But, so it was a whole different muscle group that I'm like, oh, if I hadn't done a whole lot of rucking challenges,
Mm-hmm.
I would not have had the muscles to do that. But I do a lot of the rucking challenges where I have to do that with my pack. But it's just, and I think that's also too why you have to kind of get into different things. That's why I found like over COVID, I got into, battle miles, which is a lot of rucking
Mm-hmm.
and stuff like that, which gave me different muscles that I hadn't had before that help in the obstacle course racing. And I think a lot of people get to that mentality of, well, I'm obstacle course racing, so I have to train on obstacles and I have to train to do obstacles. And it's like,
Yeah.
mentally, if you train for a lot of other things, it will correspond.
Exactly. I think one of my biggest pet peeves, and I mean, I've gotten a lot of heat for it in the past. I mean, I hate dead hangs like more than anything. I think dead hangs, yeah, like they help in some sense of racing in terms of like being comfortable holding on to something, but you're never going to just straight dead hang on an obstacle. So why is everybody so absolutely obsessed with dead hanging? Like, you need to learn how to actually move your body through space while you're holding onto a bar. It's about, learning how to hold active weight, turning all of your weight into something a little bit more functional that you can physically maneuver and swing across and, whatever else. And then people get so obsessed with this thought of like, quote unquote, grip training, where I just want to grip something as hard as I can for as long as I can. And I need to build up my biceps and I'm just going to hang from everything and grip as hard as possible. It's like, well, no, actually, if you really want to be the most efficient at hanging obstacles, like grip's going to do you great, but it would do you a lot more good to increase your shoulder mobility, learn how to hold your own weight in your core, learn how to drive from your hips, trust your shoulders enough to take some of the quote unquote grip off of the bar and let your hand adapt and around as you swing. Because if you grip that bar, fat guy in a little coat, your hands are going to only tear because our skin is built to adapt to whatever we put it through. We have this elasticity. And if you're death gripping anything, you're taking that elasticity away. And the skin is like, well, I need to expand in order to swing, but you're holding so tight. And now I just ripped your hands.
Yeah.
And that's what a lot of people don't really understand is, you don't need to be doing only obstacle specific hanging grip work. Like, you get so much more benefit from a deadlift because you're learning how to adapt with the bar. I mean, barbells have this incredible thing called spin, where as you go to lift up, the bar itself kind of spins as you pick it up, and it's going to fall right in place where it needs to on your hand. And then you're grabbing external weight, which majority of the time, I mean, not majority of the time, because a lot of people like avoid deadlifts thinking it's going to hurt their back when really it's the best thing you could possibly do for yourself. But you should be deadlifting more than your body weight. I mean, an untrained man can deadlift well over 2 times their body weight once. Like, I'm not saying go out and try it. We all have now damages and compensations and whatever else, but in the perfect anatomical specimen who's never had any injuries or damages, they should be able to deadlift at least 2 times their body weight.
Yeah.
Female is a little bit less, but it's still well over 1.5 times. Again, without compensation, whatever else. So you should be able to physically pick up with your hands and with your glutes and hamstrings more than your body weight. That is going to be much more beneficial than just hanging from a bar with only your body weight. Because I guarantee you, as you start swinging, the whole physics, science behind it all, gravity is pulling down on you. And if gravity's pulling down on dead weight, it's going to be more than your regular body weight. But as you're swinging with torque and everything else, there's the possibility, if you're not really squeezing, it's going to be feeling like a lot of weight and you're only going to fall. So pick up external weight, learn how to hold that weight, not only in your glutes and hamstrings, but hold it in your lats. You're holding it physically in your hands. There's so much more benefit to it. Same thing with, learning how to do full pull-ups through full ranges of motion. And, there are so many other great pulling exercises that will give you the same biomechanics needed for, all of your hanging obstacles than, just going in straight dead hanging.
Yeah.
And it all, again, comes back to this whole, we're performance training. We don't want to train harder. We want to train smarter. How can we condense our workouts into being the shortest but most effective things possible? I know I can be in a gym for 3 hours on a Wednesday. That's my normal Wednesday. But do I love it when I can get in and out in an hour? Of course I do. Everybody wants to try and get their workouts in as quickly as they can, because we all are, at least we're supposed to have lives outside of this. I don't, but you want to get to your normal life. So you don't want to be spending all this time hitting every single muscle group and, dead hanging for 5 minutes at a time and whatever else. If we can condense it all into 3 or 4 exercises where we're getting everything we need, why would we not do that?
Yeah, no, I agree. And that's been the one thing for like me, when I do the like monkey bars and stuff like that. Not to sound bad, I have small hands. I do not have the big, huge man hands. I have little hands. But that was one of my biggest problems when I first started doing, like Spartans and stuff like that, because the bars are bigger.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't reach all the way around the bar and like touch my fingers on the other side. So, grip to me on that, the grip isn't going to help me. I just need the strength to be able to hold myself up to be able to swing. Because like you said, if I grip like hard, my hand's not going to move. So I'm actually giving myself less wingspan, which I need as much wingspan as I can get. So I need my hand to move the bar. And that's one of the things I see a lot of people. And that's why I think like you said, your hands are going to tear. And for me, I don't hold the bar that tight, because I know my hand's got to slide on it so that I can, and that's why I said the first couple of times when my wingspan was really tested, that my hand just came right off because my hand was sliding on it because I wasn't holding. It was just kind of there, by the time I reached out for the other one. So that's one of the things that, you really, the grip strength matters, but it's not as important as I think people think. You don't need to hold that tight. You just need to be able to hold your body long enough to swing to the next one.
Yeah,
I don't stay on the obstacles that long. I want to get off as quick as possible. So I'm moving, and I just
amen to that.
I don't need the grip strength. I just need my fingers to be strong enough to catch me, and so I can swing to the next bar. And it's the same thing with the rig. I just need my hand to be able to hold and keep me on that long enough till I swing to the next spot.
Exactly. And it's crazy because obviously I'm still doing a lot of things like online and answering questions and helping people out. And we're seeing an exponential amount more of people who are complaining of pain in their elbows. And, it's lateral epicondylitis from the sounds of it. I'm not their doctor. I'm not here, diagnosing them all, but based on their symptoms and what's causing them pain, it is tennis elbow. And tennis elbow is caused by excessive gripping and excessive, rotating while you're gripping. Yeah. And it's all from people, or I'm not going to say it's all from people because I don't know, but they are most likely doing way more in the, bicep hole type of position, or they're grabbing onto rig attachments and they're turning their hands in. So they're supinating their hands while they're holding onto a bicep hold because they don't want their lats to do any of the work. They would much rather rely on their biceps and their forearms. I had a client who was complaining about pain in their elbow, and, they were fighting me tooth and nail about why I wouldn't let them, use all of these different rig attachments. And instead I gave them all like wide grip pull-ups and, anatomical position for your farmer's carries. And we did a lot of like wide, absolutely everything, a lot of scap retractions and depressions, all to wake up the back and take the pressure off of the bicep, off the elbow. But when I was, again, I'm not going to say diagnosing, because even though I am a licensed athletic trainer and I can go through the tests and everything else, without actually going to see a doctor, we can't actually diagnose it. But I said, this is what it's presenting as. You should go see a doctor. It was presenting as lateral epicondylitis. And he's not understanding the concept of, well, if you're gripping too tight, you're not going to be able to swing. So you're cutting off your shoulder mobility. So I said, make a fist with your hand, have your arm down at your side, and bring your arm up over your head from out in front while you're making a fist. And he's like, okay. I'm like, okay, now bring your arms down, shake them out. Again, arms at your side. Now, same way, swing that arm up overhead with an open hand. I'm like, do you feel the difference? And he's like, well, yeah, I have a lot less range of motion when my fist is closed. You can just feel that tension. There's a little pain. It's like, that's exactly what is happening when you are over gripping on any kind of anything. If you're squeezing, you are contracting every muscle from your fingers into your shoulders. And now you're losing that range of motion. Mm-hmm. So then we're really working on swinging. And another thing we practiced was, okay, how can we lock out if we're swinging across different rig attachments, but then still driving from our hips, as long as, you're on a ring or a rope or whatever else, if the attachment itself is moving, so it's not stable like the monkey bars, if it can move freely, then you can swing through it from your hips while holding a lockout. But it's a lot harder to learn how to swing from your hips while you're maintaining that lockout on a monkey bar. There's a way to do it, but you really need to have a solid understanding of, whether or not you're over gripping and how much mobility are you getting from your hips versus your shoulders and everything else. Right. And that's a big part of that whole confidence training for them. It's, okay, now when you grab onto this, feel where your hips are and ride it through your hips, instead of just grabbing an attachment and immediately bringing the other hand over and trying to get through as fast as you can. If you, hug an attachment into your chest while driving from your hips, it might take you just a second longer, but it's going to take a lot less energy because you're using momentum versus strength.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And it's hard to get that through to people. They see, especially as a guy, and I get it, we have this great thing of we're just going to muscle our way through things. And I've done that for years. And like I said, I've tore my rotator cuff multiple times. I've done other things like that, where looking back, it's like, if I just would have done it in a much easier use, like, instead of trying to muscle my way through, I probably wouldn't have any of these issues. But, I was young and dumb. So, but I've learned as I've gotten older, a lot of the times it's not muscling through, it's finesse. And that's, like you said, on the monkey bars and a lot of those. I mean, usually if I swing and I'm trying to get a good swing, because I know I got to really reach out, I'll swing back hard enough that people have commented that I completely let go of the bar. Yeah. Just to, like, give my hands that, whatever, just I'll let go of the bar completely and then kind of, grab it again and swing, because I know if I'm gripping too hard, I'm not going to get the swing I need.
Yeah. I actually sent a video to one of my clients a couple of weeks ago where we were talking about swinging, and I slowed down a video where I was swinging, and I said, watch my hands on my back swing. Do you see what they're doing? And they're like, well, yeah, it looks like you're like letting go. I'm like, yeah, I kind of am. There's a little bit of space between me and the bar because I was re-gripping instead of death gripping on it. I was making sure that the bar was traveling, from the calloused area to the palm as I was swinging down and coming back on the backswing. I really wanted to make sure that the bar was exactly where I wanted to go. And I mean, it's the exact same thing that we would do in gymnastics. I mean, yeah, in gymnastics, we always wore grips that had like a dowel in it that helped to hold it where we needed to. So then we didn't have to let go of the bar, but that is us re-gripping that bar so we can completely swing across.
Yeah. And it's not like you said, it's not a huge, like really let go. I mean, you really have to watch to notice, like, in that backswing that you release a little bit just to reposition your hands, because if you grip it, you're gonna hurt more. I mean, your arm's gonna twist weird. When I was a teenager, I broke my right wrist. And that's what it was. I grabbed something and I twisted wrong on it. My wrist ended up breaking. And, that's why I learned really early, release a little bit to get the grip back. Because if I have that constant grip, your hand stays where it shouldn't be. And then you end up going into a position and putting your arm, your muscles, your bones, all that stuff into positions that they shouldn't be in, because you're so gripped that your hands don't slide on the bar.
And hearing you talk about like how, as you've gotten older, you're really realizing you need, to change your technique and you're figuring out what's going on. It's so interesting because, as more people get in, and I mean, everybody's like diehard Spartan as soon as they come in, and they're like, oh my gosh, I failed this obstacle, this obstacle, this obstacle. And you're trying to offer them different ways to train and different ways to think about it, and they just kind of are shutting you out, like, no, I know how to do this, I just need more grip strength, or I just need this. And I think one of the things that is really holding our sport back is people's inability to be humble, and like their lack of humility to say, oh, maybe I don't know this. Like, I mean, we already see so many people that they don't need a trainer because it's fitness. And I've been doing fitness my entire life. I played football, or I was a swimmer. I went to gym class, so I know how to do XYZ. But when you have something like obstacle course racing, it's not just general fitness anymore.
Yeah.
You're not just going to piece things together. You literally need to talk to somebody who understands gymnastics, progressive body weight, ninja athletics, all of this different stuff about how to move your body through space. So us saying, hey, don't focus on grip quite as much isn't us saying like, oh no, you're completely off base and you don't need grip at all. It's no, there are better ways that you can be doing this. There are safer ways. I mean, there are plenty of people in this sport who aren't having injuries in their shoulders, in their elbows. They're not tearing their hands. You look at, and I'll say the men's elite heat, just because with swinging and everything else, we get a lot more resistance from men than we do for women, because men are less likely to swing. They're more likely to use their strength. And like you said, brute force, we just want to muscle our way through everything. So they would much rather lock off, and they're going to end up with all of the injuries. There are plenty of men, in fact, majority of the men in the elite and pro waves are swinging through things. Yeah, they'll use their lock off when they need to in a race, but they're still using their hips, like I explained, to drive through things. They're not just going and letting their legs kind of flail as they're like locking off across. They're keeping their body as tight as can be. They're driving through their hips, and they're using their strength to get them across. And a lot of people don't know how to put all of those pieces together, and they're not welcoming the advice to listen to people, to let them, like, help them put it all together. And I think that's probably the most frustrating thing, and the thing that I'm seeing that's really holding all of this back. Like, I get a lot of pushback. I'm a female. Men don't want to take a lot of advice from women. And, what do I know? But like, I've been doing this my entire life, and I want to help. I understand how the men's body works. I understand how the women's body works. Let me put the pieces together. You don't have to, pay me for it. Go watch one of my YouTube videos. We can figure it out. But it all starts with accepting, I don't know everything there is to know about this. I need help. How can I move forward from that?
And that's one of the hardest parts, because I'll be honest, in all honesty, I would much rather have a female physical trainer. And
Really?
yes, I would. And part of that is because I've had both. And
Mhm.
almost every, and I mean, stereotypically, I mean, we're saying stereotypically here. I mean, I'm not saying every guy's like this, but every male trainer that I have had, my experience with them has been muscle, muscle, muscle.
Mhm.
Let's lift, let's do this. And I'm like, I'm an obstacle course racer. I need some other things. I need more. I need finesse. I need to be able to do that. And they're like, oh no, we just need a lift and that'll get you there. And I'm like, no, I'm, even me, I'm like, I don't think that sounds right. But every female physical trainer I've had, which I'll be honest, it's only really two that I've really talked to, is you and my friend Elise, who's an amazing trainer as well. But it's pretty much like, hey, this is the muscles groups you need to work on. This is what's going to help you be functional. And that is the thing, is most males that I've met and talked to about like a lot of things, it's all about muscle, and we need to be bigger and we need to be stronger. And more female, physical trainers are more like, let's talk function. And I'm at an age now where I'm like, I don't want to be, people are like, oh, what do you want to be physically? Do you want to be like, The Rock or something like that? And I'm like, no, I mean, honestly, I want to be Ryan Reynolds from like Deadpool. Ryan Reynolds, he's jacked, but he's physically, I mean, he's Ryan Reynolds. He's freaking hot.
Yeah.
I'm straight. I would switch sides. But it's not just that. It's that it's functional. He can do. He can still do all the, this stuff, and it's muscular, but it's muscular in a way that works. And that's what I need. And that's where most female physical trainers see it. They're like, no, we want to be functional. I don't want to, my wife used to work at a gym and she called them meatheads. I don't want to be a meathead. I want to be, functional fitness. I want to be able to run an obstacle course race and run and do the obstacles, not just one or the other. And with most male trainers that I've dealt with, it's one or the other. Either you're going to run fast or you're going to lift heavy. And I'm like, no, I need to do both.
It's funny that you say that, because I was definitely like more of the meathead female. Like all of my clients, they lift heavy. Like we do a lot of really heavy lifting, but I have such an understanding on programming and the human body that I know how to manipulate it in a way that, we're getting the heavy work here and we're getting the plyometrics, we're getting speed, agility, quickness. We're putting the pieces all together as we need to. But I mean, I've worked in sports performance and I have trained baseball players. I've trained hockey players. I've trained basketball players. I mean, most trainers typically train in the way that they like to train themselves. So like you'll get a lot of the people that like to take classes, they only do the metabolic conditioning, and you'll get the bodybuilders who only train the bodybuilding. But there are a lot of really great trainers who have the education and the experience to know that, okay, if you are doing this, this is what we need to do. Like, I'm not just going to make any random Joe go and bench press, like, max out bench press. But I know if you're a lineman, I know you need to bench press. So let's ramp up that bench press. And, it comes with understanding what specifically you're going to be doing. And then from there, determining what biomechanics are needed so you can then strengthen it through there.
And I think that's more of what I mean. I mean, it's most of the guys that I dealt with were pretty much, they have what they want.
Tunnel vision. Yeah.
More when I've dealt with a lot of the female, they're like, okay, what are you doing with it? Like my friend Elise, she was the one who trained me for a while. And with her, it was more of, we're going to lift heavy. And she's like, I know that's not where you want to go technically, but by lifting heavy and doing these things, we're going to improve what you want to improve on. And I think that was part of it too. She explained things like when me and you talk, you're explaining why this will work, how this is going to work, where, a lot of the other guys, they're just like, just do this and trust me. And I'm like, but that's not how my brain works. I need to know where we're going. I need to kind of know the path, so that I know why I'm doing it, and that's one of the things for me is it's like, okay, if I'm lifting heavy, how is this helping me do obstacle course racing? How is this helping me run? And, that's one of the things a lot of times people don't realize doing a lot of lifting and heavy lifting does help with running.
Oh,
Does help
100%.
with conditioning, does help with that. But until it was explained to me by my friend, I'm like, how is that going to help me run? I mean, I need to run. Isn't running going to be the best thing for it? She's like, no, yes, it is. But at the same time, if you lift heavy and you do this and that, you're building the muscles up in a different way, but it's still going to help you run. She's like, trust me, you'll slow down for about a month and then you're just going to suddenly take off. And that's about what happened. All of a sudden, it was like, I kind of slowed down. I'm like, hey, it's not working. My times are getting worse. And then she's like, just trust me for like another couple of weeks. And then all of a sudden it was like, bam, I'm hitting PRs over and over again. And it's like, oh, okay. You know, I just needed to trust the process.
Yeah. Got to slow down to go fast. I mean, we have different capacities and thresholds for different kinds of things. And the way I explain it to all my clients is, you come off the season and then you go into your off season, and that's when you're really bulking up. You're building all of the muscle, you're building your strength capacity, and that is going to get you through the rest of the season. If you come in with a greater strength capacity at the start of the season, then when you go and you ramp up your speed, you ramp up your power, you're jumping faster or stronger, you're running faster, you're moving in every which way quicker, you can get on and off everything better. When you go to do some kind of carry or hoist or whatever else, they're coming up with greater ease, because even though you're naturally going to lose a little bit of that strength coming into the season because your focus has shifted, the amount that it has decreased isn't as great as it would have been if you didn't have that strength capacity coming in. It's like trying to carry a full bucket of water. If you fill the bucket to the top and then try to walk across the room, yeah, a little bit's going to spill out. But if you only fill the bucket 3/4 of a way, you're probably never going to get to where it could have been, even if you were carrying it with it all the way filled up to the top. You're still losing a little bit, and you're going to have lower capacity because of that. So you want to fill up your bucket as much as you can. So no matter what, things are going to spill out and you're going to lose a little, you're going to still have a higher capacity when you need it.
And that comes down to the mental again, where we're right back to the mental. If you don't have that mental, and that's what helped me, when I finally, because for the longest time I had that whole mentality. I've been an athlete all my life. I played baseball. I played, I was a mountain or a BMX racer, all that stuff when I was younger. I did all these crazy things. I rode my bike constantly. I'm like, I've been an athlete my entire life. I just got out of it and I got a little fat. I don't need a trainer. I know how to do this. But then I finally hit that point. I'm like, okay, no, I don't know how to do this. This isn't working. And that's when I finally got a trainer. But then it was getting out of that mental and listening to that trainer when they're telling me things that I'm like, that's not what I learned 30 years ago. This doesn't make sense to me. And then listening to them, and then I'm like, okay, hold on, listen to why this works. And like you just said, the way you explained that to me, that makes a lot more sense than, a lot of times when it's like, oh, just lift heavy, just do it. Like, but how? I want to be a runner. I don't want to be a lifter. But once I had my one friend who helped me, is a great coach, and she's just like, no, trust me, if you do all these workouts, it's gonna make your legs stronger and you will become faster. And I did, and it was just a matter of getting past that mental of I know everything, like you said, which all of us have. We get into that. I know it all. I've done this. I know how to do this. I've lost the weight before. Well, it didn't work last time. So what makes you think it's going to stick this time? So maybe you do need help. And that was my biggest thing, was finally admitting that I do need somebody else to help me. I do need to talk to somebody. I do need to have someone help me get to the next level. It was the same with the triathlons. When I first started doing it, I went to a friend who helped me learn how to swim. And everyone's like, you didn't know how to swim? I'm like, no, I knew how to not drown.
And there's a huge difference.
And there is, and you really don't know what it is till you actually get a coach, and that coach is teaching you how to swim correctly. And you're like, oh, this is completely different. I pretty much knew how to just not drown, and this last weekend, I finally hit 2,000 yards in an hour swimming, which, for me is huge. But it's one of those things that, it's getting that trainer and learning how to do it correctly.
Yeah. And I see so many athletes that come in that when we start running, they're like, I go from 120 beats per minute to 180 beats per minute, and there's nothing in between. And I'm like, okay, well, we are going to teach you how to change up. And they're like, it's not happening. It's not happening. And then they're like, oh my gosh, I didn't go past 170. And I'm like, well, yeah, it's because on those painfully slow runs where you weren't even able to get out of a walk, you were keeping your heart rate low enough that your body was being trained in a little bit, more uncomfortable position for you, but it was keeping that heart rate low enough. So then when you do push it higher, it doesn't need to jump all the way up. You're now building that conditioning.
Mhm.
And as a coach, I think one of the biggest things I look for in a client and how I know whether or not a client is going to stay with me or not is if they ask questions, if they offer pushback. I mean, I've had so many clients that will straight up tell me to like F off, or they'll be swearing at me. They're telling their significant others how much they don't want to see me, but they always come back. And it's like they're buying into the process. They're, actually interested in what we're doing. They want to know the why. They want to understand what they're supposed to feel in their body so then they can experience the true benefits behind it. If you do a Palloff press and you don't know that you're supposed to expand from the rib cage and like really breathe into it, then you're just kind of pressing your arm forward and you're like, this is the easiest exercise I've ever done. But if you understand what it's going to do, you're like, oh my gosh, this is like really tough and I'm getting so much out of it. But then I've had clients that, they don't ask questions. They don't write any notes, or, they just show up with a smile on their face, a smile, nod. They say things are tough and then they walk away. And I'm like, they're not going to come back. They're not going to last because they're not actually buying into everything. They don't really have the mentality to be there. And again, no offense to them. Like I am less invested in somebody who is going to just smile, nod, and go about their business.
Yeah.
Like, tell me what's going on. Ask the questions. Fight me a little bit. I want to convince you that what we're doing is exactly what we need to be doing. I want to break you of all of those bad habits and I want to get you to be the best you possibly can be. But if you're not buying into it and if you just think that you know more than me or, whatever else, this partnership is not going to work.
And it's got to be a partnership. That's one thing I learned when I had a coach before was it had to be a partnership. It had to be both of us working together for it. And if the client isn't willing to work for it, they're throwing their money away.
Yeah, exactly.
Because I mean, it's one of those things. It's like, if they aren't going to work for it, it's not going to do anything for them and they're throwing their money away. And for, you, I can tell by talking to you and, like I mentioned, my one friend, at least, both coaches that really care about their clients.
Mm-hmm.
And if you really care about your clients and they aren't invested, you're not invested. And then they're throwing their money away. And then you're going to basically be like, hey, this isn't working. And some people are going to be upset about it. And I mean, others, probably like, yeah, it really wasn't, but I didn't want to admit to it, and some may actually suddenly say, okay, give me another chance. And suddenly they come out of it, but others, it's probably for the best.
Training, fitness, all of it. It's an investment.
Mm-hmm.
You are physically investing in you. I want to help you get an outcome. You need those returns on that investment. And that is, you're performing the best that you can, you're feeling the best, you're in your healthiest state, whatever it is you want to quote unquote perform at. I want to get you there. If it's one of my more, and I say general fitness clients, even though I don't consider them general fitness, they still very much have a purpose when they show up. If it means that they're 72 years old, still working, not having to go to the doctor, improving their posture with, no neck pain, no shoulder pain, no back pain, like, I want them to not have to go to the doctor. They shouldn't be putting that money into health insurance and into whatever else to keep their body functioning. I would much rather them put their money into themselves to keep them functioning.
Yeah. And by the health, getting healthy, it's gonna keep you from going to the doctor.
Exactly.
Before I lost the weight, I was going to the doctor every couple months. I go like once a year now, and the doctor's like, "Yeah, you're fine. Go away."
Yeah.
It's the first time in 15 years, my doctor looked at me and said, "All the tests are fine. You're good."
I went in a couple of weeks ago for just like an annual physical, and it's always like, Megan, you're the healthiest client I have. And they're like, well, they're going through the questions. They're like, so do you smoke? I'm like, no, I'm a runner. I just ran 30 miles this weekend. And they're like, oh yeah, your resting heart rate's like 54. You're pretty healthy. Like, is there anything else that's going on? I'm like, no, I'm just here because like, you're supposed to check in with your doctor.
Yeah.
So I guess I'll see you next go around. I don't know. Like, okay, perfect. Bye.
Yeah, pretty much. Well, we should probably be tying this up because we're past the hour.
I know. Oh gosh, we're gonna do it every time.
We are, because we both get into it. We're both passionate about this. We both want to see people succeed. We both want that, and I mean, we're both, yeah. I mean, and I just love talking to you, so it's fun.
Right, same. But I really love this sport, and I want to see this sport grow. And if everybody just comes in and says, "Oh, well, this is just a weekend hobby, and I'm just going to go to Orange Theory down the street," and I'm sorry, I'm not trying to like knock Orange Theory, and like it can be very helpful for people. Mm-hmm. But like if you're only going to some generic class and saying, "I'm going to go run a Spartan on the weekend," that's not helping this sport as a whole grow. You have to think, I am an athlete. I am going to invest in the sport. I want to find somebody who specializes in this sport because I want the best performance possible. And, we are all trying to build something bigger than ourselves. We want this sport to continue on. So let us help you. Keep coming out to the races, but then keep reaching out to coaches and trainers and everything else. And let's keep you performing to the best of your abilities.
Yeah. And if you have any questions that you'd like, for the next time, because I'm sure we'll be doing this again. We'll be talking again. 100% all the time. Any questions that you have that you want us to bring up, let me or Megan know, and we will bring them up on the next time we talk, and we'll talk about whatever questions you all have. So, because I know everyone has them. So
yeah, I could talk. I literally do talk for days about this stuff.
Yeah.
And I want to be a resource for everybody. So ask away any questions you have. I want to hear them. I want to answer them.
Yeah. And I look forward to doing this again. Let's talk on how often we want to do this. It seems like I don't know, because I think Dawn was talking like once a month. I'm like, I don't know if that's enough. But
yeah, right.
we have way too much to talk about. So I know I'm probably gonna have some questions after this weekend because I'm going to do San Antonio. So
awesome. Well, have fun. I'm interested to see how that goes since they're doing like the 2-lap format.
2-lap. I saw that was weird, so it's gonna be
I was really surprised, but I was really happy that it's not just 2 laps of the sprint.
Yeah.
They actually are bringing out some super obstacles, so that's good. So I'm really curious how they're gonna like cut the course to do all of that.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. So we'll see, because I'm running both days competitive. So.
Oh, awesome. Good luck.
Yeah, we'll see how I do. So, all right. Well, thank you. And we'll talk soon to figure out when the next time we should do this. Like I said, we're over an hour, and actually
I know
my wife's bugging me because we're supposed to leave in like 10 minutes to go do trivia.
Go.
So, yeah. So, and it's Disney trivia, and I'm actually really good at that. So.
Well, have fun.
All right. Thank you. And it's been great talking to you as usual.
Always.
We'll talk soon.
Yep. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to the BeastNet podcast. If you haven't done it yet, find us on Facebook, like and share the podcast. Give us a review on iTunes or Spotify. All these things will help to expand the show in the future. Don't forget to subscribe and let us know what you think and what you'd like to hear.